what's something that we wouldn't expect Kanye to listen to? Like, what do you?
Well, I think people expect me to listen to anything, but I listen to James Blake the most. That's like my favorite artist. He's James Blake. Just go listen to his music and say, hey, that's Kanye's favorite artist is James Blake.
James Blake. All
James
right.
Blake.
Right, let's do this. I've just got my hearing aids, and I also just got back from Carnival in Venice.
Climbed that. I've climbed that in Assassin's Creed.
I really, really recommend people go there. It's mad. It's mad. Now, on to James Blake. I've been an avid listener of Blake's from about 2010 to 2011, around those points, so quite a long time. His discography is immense and really versatile as well. So if you're a new listener, or you're looking to get into him, or you're just a fan of James Blake anyway, you've come to the right place. So I'm going to cover his entire library. That's all EPs and all albums as well. So let's just get straight into it without further ado. Okay, so we're going to start with the Air and Lack of EP. This came out in 2009. In all honesty, you kind of have to start somewhere, and I just don't think there's a lot to this EP. There's some really interesting ideas that come through much later on, and you sort of see the seeds being sown here, but I'm probably just gonna have to slap it in D. I do just want to preface as well, the S, A, B, C, D, it's not D as in terrible. I genuinely don't think anything that James Blake has made is terrible. And I still think all of his EPs and LPs are worth listening to, even things that would end up on the D tier here. So yeah, I'm just going to leave it there. I think that you got to start somewhere. Okay, so the next one is the Bell Sketch EP. This came out in, I think, 2010. Again, this one's really interesting, and again, sowing the seeds for what is yet to come. He's using his voice a lot more on this EP, especially in comparison to the first one. I mean, in early interviews with James Blake, he did preface many times that he was very uncomfortable with his voice and strictly just wanted to make electronic music without the need for his voice. After this, he gradually gets more of a songwriter approach to his music, but this EP is really good. If anyone's like looking to get the best early parts of James Blake's career, this EP is a really good place to start with. I'm actually going to slap this straight in B tier. Okay, this is the famous CMYK EP. That again came out in, I think, 2010. I really had to check my dates before this, but I think it came out in 2010. This is really good. Really good. And you can tell that a lot of those ideas sort of paved the way for specifically the debut that would come out, I think, the year after in 2011. I think if I remember rightly, Footnotes is the only bad inclusion on this EP. The rest of it's really, really good, and there's so many good ideas here. And a lot later on in his career, he would make a part 2 to this EP, but it's definitely worth going to and listening to this if you haven't, because it is really, really good. Really fascinating to see how his electronic music has evolved so much. But yeah, kind of all stemming from this EP right here. Really worth your time even today. So I'm going to slap this in beta. Really good. Okay, so this is Pembroke featuring Airhead. This came out in 2011. It's really short and sweet. I think it's 2 tracks that make up the EP. But it's actually stood the test of time really well, and it's really worth listening to. I'm actually thinking about maybe giving this an A tier. It's an A or a B. I know we've got a few in B already. What I'm going to do is I'll put it in B, and I'll probably come back to that one. That could actually be an A for me. Okay, so the next EP is Love What Happened Here. This is, it's so much fun, this EP. Really, I listen to this all the time, even today. And I think this is where I really first started getting into him. All the tracks are quite long, but they're really worth listening to. This is going to go in A tier, and I think we're going to keep the Pembroke one in B in relation to this one. Out of all of the early EPs and singles he was releasing, Love What Happened Here is definitely has the most to it, and it was just before his debut. So a lot of those ideas were, it's almost like an extension, and it could be like a B-sides to the debut. But yeah, really, really good. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to James Blake's first LP. This is self-titled. It's called James Blake. This is incredible. This might actually be one of my favorite albums of all time, not just James Blake, but just in general. There's a lot to it, so it's quite long. What we've done is, as well, if you're an avid Blake listener, you'll know that I've probably skipped over an EP. That EP is called Enough Thunder. This is the deluxe edition of the original LP, and with Enough Thunder on the end of the LP, that makes this one S tier for me, genuinely. Don't really want to get into like a deeper detail that isn't too much to do with the music, but when I was at university, I struggled quite a bit, and this album really helped me get through that. It's quite dark and dingy, very minimalist, but it's got some like really fascinating ideas. And in terms of atmosphere, I don't think he's, maybe other than Overgrown, I don't think there's an atmosphere that he's presented that's been this deep almost, you know, like there's got a lot of depth to it, and it's fascinating to see where he's come from here, because technically this is his start. He has an instant S tier for me. It is chef's kiss, genuinely so good. Go listen to it if you haven't, please. Okay, so we're gonna go to Order and Pan. This came out the same year, so 2011, as his debut. What I should do really is make an F tier, because this should be on the F tier. This is not very good at all. Honestly, it's just quite boring. So there's 2 tracks, so it's not really, it may as well be a single to some degree. There's Order and then Pan. It was just a weird one I think it was a part 2 to the original Hemlock, and the original Hemlock I didn't really get on with that anyway. For now, I guess it's just going to be in D tier. Can I change this? What does that do? Oh no, it just moves it up. Oh, I've changed things. I didn't need to change things. I get pink. Who doesn't like pink? Okay, you know what? D tier is now pink. Fuck. Okay, I've sorted it out. I've put it in F, which is where it belongs. Okay, so we're gonna move on to his second LP. This is Overgrown. This is where I think a lot of people started listening to Blake for the first time, and this is where it really solidified my time in listening to him, because obviously after an LP, your second album is arguably the most important in your discography, because it shows you can follow up with consistency, and he kind of knocked it out of the park. The only way I can describe this is Waskaruskis. Probably my initial reaction to this when it first came out. It's going straight in S tier. Let's just briefly talk about it. I think it's quite clear that Jim Jam was espresso depresso on this album. You can tell. So he was obviously living in London at the time, and I think since he's moved to LA, he's had multiple conversations and interviews about how depressed he was around this time. Again, with the atmosphere of the debut, he sets a similar tone here, but in a different direction. You do have bangers like Life Round Here and Retrograde and Voyeur, and I think a lot of those, I mean, if you go and see a live performance of James Blake today, he's still going to be playing those 3 songs and a couple more as well. Yeah, so I know he also got to work with like Wu-Tang Clan's RZA for this, and that was a big part for him to do in his interviews. Actually, it was around this time as well, when this album came out, that Kanye West said James Blake is his favorite artist of all time. That's obviously amazing to hear from his perspective as well. Chances are, if you're watching this and you know about James Blake, you would have already heard this album. I don't really have much else to say about it, really. It's just so good, and I feel like everyone kind of knows that too. This is a lot of people's favorite James Blake album, and I completely understand why that might be. Okay, so the next one is The Color in Anything. Again, third album. Strangely enough, he actually released nothing between Overgrown and The Color of Anything. I know he fell out with his label over this, which is why there was no promotion for it. So the strange thing is, this might be one of my favorite albums of Blake's, but honestly, I can't really give it more than a B tier. Yeah, I can't really give it more than a B, just because it is a bit of a mess. It is like, it's got amazing songs, and again, atmosphere, but it is all over the place, and James Blake even attested to that himself. I don't think he's happy with a lot of the tracks on this, or at least how they come together. My main gripe with this is its order, And if I could change around the track list, I definitely would. Some of the songs on this album are incredible. There's not actually a song that I dislike altogether, but it is a choppy mess. And it goes from sort of songwriting ballads to really weird electronic synth, like heavy synth. It's a tough one to place. So if this was my personal tier list of things I just personally liked the most, and I wasn't trying to be objective, it would be an S tier. But I am trying to be objective here, and the production's interesting but not consistent. It's not the cleanest of records. I'm actually tempted to maybe move it up one, just because of the artwork. The artwork is amazing. Okay, so I'm actually going to break my rule on this. I've specifically avoided doing singles because if I did all the singles, we'd be here forever. I just try to keep it to EPs and LPs. This is a single, so this is If the Car Beside You Moves Ahead. And it came out in 2018. The reason why I wanted to include this is because I think it might be James Blake's best song. That's really hard to pin down, even for me. But I think as time's gone on, I come back to this song all the time, as I do with so many other tracks. But there's something very unique about this, and specifically when it came out as well. There was like a breath of fresh air in electronic music for me, and this really excited me for his upcoming album, which would be Assume Form. Unfortunately, nothing on Assume Form was like this track, but we'll get to that. But this is an S tier for me. It's only a track, so if you haven't heard it, go and listen to it. It's obviously not on any albums. It just released as a single, but it's so good. It's really strange, and it's one that I would 100% recommend listening to with headphones on. It can be really trippy, and the music video is really good as well. And it was like a call back to his earlier days, especially his earlier EPs, where he wasn't too confident with his voice, and obviously at this point we know he is, but he really experiments with his voice and adds it like an instrument to the track as opposed to being the forefront. There's a really nice vocoder effect and delay, stuttering. It's really cool. So go and listen to it if you haven't. If you have, what do you think in the comments? Because this might be a more controversial approach to say that this might be his best song. But yeah, let me know what you think. Okay, Assume Form. James Blake goes mainstream, is what I like to think about with this album. I'm gonna put it here. No. This might be the most controversial opinion I have about James Blake. So I didn't really like this album too much when it came out, and I don't think it's aged particularly well. I think some songs definitely have. I think Where's the Catch with Andre 3000 is incredible. His verse is incredible. Rosalia's feature on Barefoot in the Park, again, another incredible inclusion. There were some really good features on this album. My only problem is this was the second of the trilogy of songwriting. So Color and Anything, Assume Form, and then Friends That Break Your Heart, which would come after this. But I still think this album's all over the place. I think there are beautiful ballads and really interesting ideas on more like Metro Boomin type beats. Again, much like with Color and Anything, change around the track list and I think you get a more dynamic listen here and something that's a bit more straight shooting. I think there are too many ideas fleshed out in too short of a track list. In terms of consistency from start to finish, in terms of a listen, it's probably about a 7 out of 10, and that's not bad at all. Like a 7 out of 10 is incredible in most cases. I just didn't like this one. I just thought it was a bit all over the place. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely better than the Hemlock EPs. It could even be on B, to be honest. I could put it on B. Oh god, I'm gonna change my mind. I think it should be on B. Damn. Yeah, I think it's gonna be on B. It's between C and B for me. It's definitely between C and B for me. Yeah. Let me know what you think in the comments though, because this is an album I still don't know. I definitely know it's not my favourite of his, nowhere near. And I don't think, it's not the worst thing he's ever done, but a lot of people obviously listen to him for the first time for this album as well. This was very much like an Overgrown-esque moment where it sort of pushed him again to the mainstream. It's between a C and a B. I'm gonna put it in a C. Sorry. Okay, so now we move on to the Before EP.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, straight to
which came out in 2020. So it had been quite a long time since he just released an EP. There were quite a few singles between the albums that he was releasing, but it had been quite a stretch without an EP. I really liked the Before EP. It's gonna go in B for me. We've got a lot in B actually. No, it's gonna go in B. I'm not gonna change it just because of the aesthetic. I'm gonna put it in B. There's some really good songs on this. It's quite short. I think it's 4 songs. One of the songs actually featured on a Cadillac commercial. But really, really interesting ideas. Really fun. Really funky. Nothing too groundbreaking on this EP. I think it must have been recorded during COVID, and it's really fun. That's all I have to say about this one. It's just fun. Go and listen to this if you haven't. It's fun. It's just fun. It's really, really fun. It's one of the fun ones. It'd be fun in. Okay, so we've now moved on to covers. I'm gonna put it in the covers column, I think. Probably put it in the covers column. I actually really like this, but the Godspeed cover is really interesting, but I just can't really rate it against anything else he's done. Obviously, none of it's original. If you ever get the chance to listen to one of his live performances where it's quite acoustic and it's just him and a piano, you're going to get a lot of these ideas come through with that. It's a different side to Blake. Obviously, he shows off his classical ability a bit more. It's fun. If you like the songs, then you'll like his covers. It's one of those ones. They do feel quite safe. They're merely just acoustic versions of songs that you've heard before. But it's fun. It is good. I just can't rate it against anything else that he's done. I'm sure you guys would understand. We're now on to Friends That Break Your Heart. This came out in 2021. Out of the trilogy of songwriting albums that he wrote, I think it's probably the best. Between Color and Anything, Assume Form, and this is probably the most complete project out of the 3 at least. It's certainly more focused and cohesive than the other 2. I might prefer the Color and Anything, but this is a complete project, and by this point you could tell that he'd really identified his sound and solidified it, made it concrete, and he came through with a classic example of, I assume, what he wanted to do on Color and Anything, and it came through a bit clearer here. When this album first came out, I didn't really know what to think about it too much, but I have listened to it time and time again since its release, and there's a lot here to like, and I genuinely think this is an album that will stand the test of time in the genre of songwriting. It's fun, it's good, there are some really good features, the production is insane. This might be his best produced album, this one or maybe the next one, but we'll get to that. I'm going to leave it at A. Chances are a lot of you have probably already heard a lot of the songs that come from this. He's quite vulnerable in his lyricism on this album as well. It's interesting, it's a really nice end to the trilogy, and in his interview, I think with Apple Music, he said he was kind of done with the trilogy, and this would be the last one. Although we might see glimpses of similar styles that he produces from here, I expect this to be the end for a while, at least for the next 5 to 10 years, for there just to be an album which is strictly just songwriting. I think an A's a solid place for this album. So the next one is Playing Robots into Heaven. This came out in 2023. James was definitely going back to an older style. Having stated that he'd had a break from his songwriting trilogy, I think he wanted to just have a refresh and go back and maybe try some more versatile ideas, things that he hadn't really tried before in a very long time. There's a lot of ideas on this album which are reminiscent of something you would see on one of his earlier EPs. Not the Hemlocks, but maybe the Pembroke and the Bells. It's an S tier for me. It's a really strange one. So I listened to this, when it first came out, and I liked a lot of the ideas. I was liking the singles leading up to it. Things like Big Hammer, such an interesting direction for him to go in at this point. This album has already aged really well. And I know it hasn't been long since then, it's only been a couple of years, but it's actually gotten better since then. And I'll be very interested to see how it evolves over the next 5-10 years, because the ideas are exciting and they're refreshing, but it's not necessarily anything too new. If you've ever seen his Boiler Room sets on YouTube, a lot of them are available on there. It's quite reminiscent of that. His early clubbing days and his early DJing days are dotted throughout this album, and you can hear that. like its influence is clear as day. I remember driving back from the Isle of Wight, which isn't too far from where I live. It's about 3 or 4 hours. I was in a bit of traffic, and then the traffic cleared up, and I put this album on just as the sun was coming down. I genuinely fell in love with it from that moment in time. And I think this is probably his best produced album so far, to date. I might prefer his debut, I might prefer Overgrown, I might prefer Colour in Anything. His best produced album, without a doubt, is his most recent. Doesn't surprise me. I mean, as a producer, your skills would grow and develop as you progress throughout your career. You meet more producers who are more in line with your style and your genre, and you develop your sound alongside the people you're around. And it's just incredible. Just incredible. I think it deserves an S tier. As I said, it's between an A and an S. I'm going to put it in S tier. Okay, so the next one is CMYK 2. This is part 2 to the original CMYK. It's like your brand new, squeaky cleany personal trainer for the gym. It actually sounds like this could have been produced by Trent Reznor. And displayed in movies such as Social Network or Challenges or something. It's a lot of fun, and you can actually tell that Blake's having a lot of fun recording this as well. You can just tell. And I think it's going to go in A tier. Really worth listening to if you haven't listened to it. It's quite housey, quite dancey, quite upbeat. Some of the sounds are extraordinarily intense. We have some really heavy synthesis on a couple of the tracks, but they make for an interesting listen, engaging, thought-provoking, just fun, and I think it's a solid A tier for me. Yeah. Okay, so the last one. This is bad. Cameo. Feel it flowing through my veins. With Lil Yachty. I really like Lil Yachty, and actually this collaboration isn't surprising at all. I'm not surprised at all that this works. I think it does work. I actually think they might have rushed some parts of this. I don't know, just not given it enough time to breathe. For me, this is a D tier. I think it has some good ideas, but some of the tracks are quite long. I don't think their conclusions are strong enough to justify your time having spent in a 5-minute track. It's almost like it gets to a conclusion and nothing really happens after that. I was kind of expecting a bit more, especially from these two artists. I don't know who was the problem here, but it doesn't work as it should. It's almost like the stars aligned and they missed, which is weird. It's going to go in D. I'm probably going to give that my final placement as well. Yeah, okay, I'm happy with that list. On second thoughts, I might move some of these around. I think that's going to go in C. Yeah, okay, I think that's going to be my final list. Let me know what you think in the comments. As I said, I've never really done a tier list before. I can do more if people want to see more. I mainly have videos on music in general, and mainly for music and video games, but I am thinking about maybe focusing more on artists or having undiscovered artists and having a segment on that. But yeah, let me know what you think, and at this point in my YouTube career, I'm happy to do what anyone else would recommend, and what people want to see, I will happily give a go. So thank you so much for watching. I've been Destino. Thank you very much.